Welcome back, everybody, to Center of Life Black History Month. And we have been interviewing people who have made history and are making history, but they're closer than you think. They're right here in the city of Pittsburgh. And we have the pleasure right now of interviewing two of my favorite, two of the people who inspired us to even start Center of Life and do the work that we're doing. Right here with Pam Johnson and Dr. James Johnson II, Jr. So he's Junior. Dr. James Johnson Jr. There's a lot of James Johnsons here. There's two more after him. But we are right here at the African-American Music Institute. I'm so proud to be here. I grew up right here in Homewood and had access to this place, and so many powerful, gifted, talented musicians and singers, composers, writers, producers have come right out of this place right here. And now many of them are playing all over the world. And but first, we need to, when we think about people who are all over the world that are playing and came out of Pittsburgh, the first thing I think about is whose fingerprints are on them. And the fingerprints of these people are all over those guys and women that are out there that have been playing. So I want to say thank you all for this interview. Thank you for having us, being able to come into your place and be with you all. We want to start off by learning a little bit about the background of your background, where you came from. How did you become musicians? How did you get into that world?
Well, you've known me a long time, so you know I'm a history buff. That's right. When you start off using the word Black Month, most people don't know that the force and the thought process behind Black Month came right out of Pittsburgh, right out of Penn Hills. There was a lady named Dr. Edna McKenzie, who a lot of people will recognize. You can Google her. I walked to her house one day, and she was had a picture of she and Jimmy Carter standing together holding the war. I said, Doc, what is this? She said, this is when, was Ford, under the Ford administration, it was initiated. And then later on, Jimmy Carter recognized, the committee and the work of Dr. She was not the chairman of the committee, but she was the powerhouse behind the committee. And she is the president of the National Carter G. Woodson Association, because we used to have Black Week. So anybody go Google this lady. She was a powerhouse and she was a voice. So since you mentioned Black Month, I just wanted to make sure you
history. Absolutely.
So I don't know if you're going to start with me or my wife, but my music influence goes all the way back to Kansas City, Missouri, because I was born in Tennessee, but I was raised in Louisiana. But at the time, I'm going back to first grade, we didn't have a piano in our house at that time. So the only time I heard my mother play the piano is when she was at her mother's house in Kansas City. She's a classically trained pianist. She was really good. Her forte was Chopin. And I used to sit on the piano stool, wiggling my feet was really to touch the floor. And that's my first. And then my grandmother, who was her mother, brought out these 78 records of Nat King Cole. Now, I was not into vocal music at that time. And I still wasn't out, but I listened to him. I was into his piano playing. Right. And I had never heard anything like that. So that's my first entrance into just the whole idea of this music world and how different it was. So we grew up, and of course I was in the band and the choirs, starting back in elementary school. My sister was also a musician, great opera singer. Came up through the ranks, and I finally migrated to the violin. I used to play in symphony orchestras. I made my living doing that, and I sent myself to college playing the violin. A lot of people don't know that about me, but that was my classical music background. And then I started playing the piano, and I remember in Mays Chapel in Ruston, I was using all the black notes, which formed the pentatonic scale. So it was easy because
right.
I said, wow, these keys are matching my skin. And I eventually found out that a lot of songs are written on this scale. You know this song?
Oh, yeah. What's going on?
The whole first half. Same. make thousands of dollars off of black notes.
Yeah.
They came easily. Then I played drums. I played drums for a while in the Grambling State University marching band. And I was playing violin and introduced myself to the piano at the same time. I didn't really get serious about the piano until I met Herbie Hancock. And, he recognized the talent in me, and he and Don Bird, and we all went out and we had lunch. And I learned a whole lot, about the world of music. Period. And that was
Don Bird, the guitar player?
No, Don Bird, the trumpet
player.
Oh,
trumpet player, okay.
Don Bird and the Blackbirds?
Okay.
Yeah, and I would, years later, play with him for a couple of years. So I've had the opportunity to play with a number of so-called jazz, named jazz artists.
Right.
But the heart of my spirit comes out of the black church. And I also remember, I grew up as a CME, Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. And I remember when the quartets used to come, they would come after service. And I would see electric guitars and say, oh, this is different. Bass. And then they would just start harmonizing. But because it was so late, I couldn't stay for the whole concert because my mother made me go home and go to bed. Our house was right next door to the church.
Okay.
I remember leaving the church crying. So all of that, was my entree into music. And then I started singing. I started singing opera. I wasn't as great as my wife, but at the time I was ranked second in the state of Louisiana in opera behind Charles Young, who's also a friend of mine. Oh, he had a beautiful voice. So I had all these experiences in jazz and in the church and so forth. And so when I brought forth this curriculum for the Afro-American Music Institute, I took a look at both, the two streams of the music, and put it into a curriculum. Then we gradually added some of the African components, doing the camps where they have the steel pan drums and so forth. And many other influences came after that, but the core was the coming together of those two main streams for me. So we have one that's more traditional European and one that's hands-on, more right-wing oriented. So I was told by Professor Nkatia, who at that time was the world's foremost authority on African music, who also had a choir here, that as long as I'm an educator, the nature of my job is to have problems. And he was right, because even now to this day, I can't get through to a student, and another student that say something that would lay me out. I said, wow, I never thought of that. So I'm not perfect. I mean, this is what the growing, and then one thing Herbie Hancock said to me, and that he had played, and I'll shut down because I can go on and on. He had played an opposite of Oscar Peterson, and it was solo piano. So he came across the street to he was doing a Cool Jazz Festival. I don't remember the name of the club where I was. And he was talking about how intimidated he was playing across from Oscar Peterson. I said, you, Herbie Hancock? You won more jazz polls than anybody I know of in Downbeat magazine. Yeah. You know what he said to me? And I never forgot to this day. Both he and Billy Taylor gave me some advice when I was young. Herbie Hancock told me the day he stopped learning, it means one thing. I said, what? He's dead. So learning is, what he was saying is learning is a lifelong process. Yeah. And so, I mean, I'll just stop there with the music because I stayed in the church. I'm still in the church today. I'm just not as active because I'm a little bit older and my schedule got a little bit hectic. But when you asked me how I met my wife, that was more for music and how I proposed to her as a matter of document.
Maybe I should let her tell it.
Huh?
Yeah. My wife always loves to tell how we got together. She don't like my version.
Well, we got together. His father, being a CME minister, was moved to the church that I had just joined, which I'm glad I did because I've been Baptist all of my life. And then his father, I started going to the CME church, and I'm glad I went because I had the opportunity to meet James Johnson. Okay. So he was the minister's son, and all the girls was going after him. I said, I just sit back and wait till they all finish, and then I do my thing, and he won't know what hit him. And that's exactly what happened. So I was only like 15, going on 16.
You're preaching, son.
I don't preach.
You know the drill.
No, I don't preach songs. Yes, indeed. Anyway, I just fell in love with him. You know, men don't know what that's about when girls fall in love, but my childhood sweetheart.
Isn't that something?
Always
How old were you when you met?
16.
Teenagers.
16, 15, 16. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
16. Yep. Teenagers.
That's
Yes,
a
indeed.
blessing. Everybody doesn't experience that.
Yeah, I
so
hear you.
that's a huge blessing. How did you get into music?
Well, my mother the same. She was a classical trained piano player, and then my grandmother, you know, she was a music teacher. My mother was the pianist of the church. My grandmother was the organist of the church. So I grew up in music. And then in school, when I went to middle school, went from elementary school to middle school, I was in the choir. They had to audition for choirs back then. Just didn't want to hear your voice, and all of a sudden, I just sung my little, you know, audition song. And that teacher said to me today, she said, "Pamela, you have a gift." I said, "What is it now, miss?" It was the operatic sound that just came natural with me. So I did a lot of operas, even coming up in middle school. I did Ahmad and the Night Visitors, was a Christmas opera, and I did a excerpt from Porgy and Bess. And I had scholarships to go to colleges in opera, and I thank God for the gift, but it's not necessarily what I wanted to necessarily be. So
You also did the Broadway semi-boy.
yeah, I did Sammy Boy. I've done a lot of things in the young
Well, let me
years.
ask something about her mother.
Yeah, my
Her
mom.
mother, who used to be real tight with Sam Cooke,
Cooke,
used to go together,
Before he was
taught
famous
me
now.
gospel music. She could play some
Boogie.
gospel, some boogie,
Boogie,
some
oh my
blues.
God.
So she played.
Yeah, she was.
She played it all.
Okay.
She was.
Okay.
She didn't get so much into the jazz, but you know, with
Yeah,
the
boogie,
classical boogie,
Yeah.
the honky tonk, and all that kind of stuff. She did that. She basically was my influence in gospel.
Gospel music.
That's something.
She was something else.
That's
in gospel.
special.
Yes.
That is special. So coming up, you probably got picked up by a few headliners at some point, right? You played with.
Well, I was able to play with while I was in college. Don
Okay.
Bird, Kenny Burrell.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I had to play in front of, in Chicago, Herbie Hancock, Billy Taylor, Les McCann. I'm sure I'm missing a whole lot of them, and that's the day that Billy Taylor said something to me that I'll never forget. This was the Jesse Jackson's breadbasket operation in Chicago, and they would send representatives from most of the historically black colleges and universities.
Right.
And I was one of two chosen to represent Grambling State, which is where I got my degree from. So they wanted us to play in front of all these, and there were others too. Seniors, Roberta Flack was sitting out there. So Billy Taylor saw that I was visibly nervous. Of course, I mean, you sit out there and all these giants. He walked over to me, he said, "Young man," he said, "never worry about what other people, or don't try to be what other people are. Don't try to be me, don't try to be, you know, whoever else was out there. Ramsey Lewis was out there. Don't try to be Ramsey, you be you. People will appreciate you for what you are and not trying to be something else." And that relaxed me. And I somebody passed on to my students. Don't worry about it. Like, you say what you want to say musically from your heart, you'll be appreciated much more than trying to imitate exactly somebody else.
Right.
You know, who you've looked up to. And it's all right to have a little bit of influence.
Yeah.
But no, I never will forget, and I got a chance to meet so many musicians back in the day. So headliners for me came mostly after I arrived in Pittsburgh in 1977. And I mean, you know, Hank Crawford, mostly the concerts. The one I had a long stay with Kenny Clark, father of modern jazz drummer. We have a picture of the band over there where we played for 6 weeks. It was called a revival at the Crawford Grill. I was in and out with Don Bird for 2 years. Nathan Davis was there, and we had a group that was, you know, playing different places. But we're trying to remember all the musicians that I've. It's just been a lot.
That's a hard one.
Yeah, it's been a lot.
Yeah.
And some of the experiences were pleasant, some not so pleasant. You know, because musicians, you know, they have an ego. You know, and I was on NPR with Dexter Gordon and Woody Shaw.
Okay.
So, but the list goes on and on in terms of having touch bases with some of these musicians. And I think Kenny Clark would be the greatest influence on my wife and I in terms of
Definitely.
heavy jazz music.
So Kenny Clark lived with you all.
Yes. 79.
So before we get to that,
Mhm.
I want to talk a little bit about maybe some of the struggles that you all had seen just come, because you were musicians. You had church background,
Definitely.
but you also were musicians, and you were coming around in the 60s and 70s, and that was a different time. And as black people, we were experiencing some very difficult days. And I'm just, interested in your journey around that time and how you stayed true to the music, how you stayed true to yourselves, your own identities, and got to the place where you would even come to Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh, that's a different animal than from where y'all came from.
Yes.
Right.
Right. You want to answer that, Dr. J? You good at
Well,
telling the stories?
I mean, to me, our better days in terms of the struggle as musicians were at Shreveport. We had a band called the Polyphonics, which I named, starting back at Grambling. And then I was the schoolmaster at the Lakeside School of Music in Shreveport, Louisiana, under Dr. Ernest Stanton, who was my mentor. So we were able to enjoy band crew. I mean, we never had to lift an instrument.
Right.
We never had to set up sound. We always got paid well, got paid on time.
Nice.
I done started experiencing the struggle until I came to Pittsburgh and started playing in the children's. So I'm gonna just be frank with you. Sometimes I'm not gonna call any names because I don't want anybody's family to
Tell the truth, brother.
But sometimes we didn't get paid.
Yeah.
And there were times, I remember when I was, the gigs back home were like basically 8 to 12 to club. Yeah, here was 9 to 1. For me, that was, it's the same, but it's still the idea of 9. Then they stuck in a half hour on us.
Yeah.
Then at the end of the night, you sitting there tired, you know, struggle bringing all these instruments in. I had a B200 organ sometimes. I had a heavy suitcase in the roads. You had to sit there an hour just to wait on your pay. It drove me crazy. I said, you know what? This is not the lifestyle I want. And my dad had warned me because I didn't have too many great skills. Like, you better get your education because you have to make it in the real world. You're gonna starve. But the struggles really came when more of us came to Pittsburgh.
So talk a little bit about the Pittsburgh struggles.
Well, I'm gonna put it this way. It haven't been a bad struggle. I think the beauty of everything coming to Pittsburgh was I was starting the Afro-American Music Institute.
Okay.
Coming here in 1977. Starting a music school in 1982. Our life have been Afro-American Music Institute, especially mine. Whereas Dr. J teaches at the universities and all of that, mine have been Afro-American Music Institute through all the years. And I have to say, we've been so blessed to have been able to come so far and so many years, 40 years of our lives. Because this is very important to us because the impact that it has on people, not to mention the impact it has on our lives, watching all these young children have come through this institute. And we teach all ages, from 6 years old. The oldest student was 96 years old, Mrs. Catherine Smith. She took guitar and piano. She was an inspiration to all of us. If she can do it, we know we need to be trying to do it. Yeah. But this school have been my life. My husband and I moved here when we was only 28 years old, and we both happen to be 73 now. But the point is, it's been fun, and a lot of love involved. It's not just about the school and the music, it's the love that comes from these two Southerners, from Shreveport, Louisiana is where I'm from, and Dr. J by way of Grambling. But when I moved here, people knew about Shreveport because Terry Bradshaw is from Shreveport, Louisiana, so that helped a lot, Yeah. But I've loved every moment of it, and that's why the word struggle is something you think negative, but it's been a very good struggle, positive struggle.
It was good trouble.
Very good struggle. We still existing, so that says a lot.
That's right. Well, mentioning the starting of the African American Music Institute, I'm not sure when, Dr. J, I'm not sure when you started at the University of Pittsburgh.
77.
Was it 77?
That's what brought us here.
Okay.
Nathan Davis offered for him to come work on his master's and doctorate degree.
Yeah.
And I always tell people I won't say we got stuck here, but the music school is why we never left.
Okay.
I was just gonna.
Well,
Yeah,
Pittsburgh is a
traveled-
big musical
It's a big
place.
musical
I
place.
traveled with Nathan many places
Many
across
places,
the nation and Europe and throughout the Caribbean. And because I was playing with him, I got a chance to rub shoulders with other big. I mean, I was there one night when there was a saxophone. I'm gonna call it a battle between he and Lou Tabak. Was it Tenor Madden? I said, man, when you gonna stop? You know, it's like they were fist fighting, you know, stuff like that. But that was just one example because he knew everybody that we had studied in jazz. He had something dealing with.
Yeah.
You know, we had studied in jazz history.
Right.
They think that he was personal friends, and that's why for many years that jazz seminar at the University of Pittsburgh was so successful.
Yeah.
Because he got at them at a lower rate than normally you had to do it. All these headliners on the stage at one time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's why that.
Wow, that is something. You know, when you were at Pitt, you know, I graduated from Westinghouse in '77, but then I didn't get to Pitt until '80. I don't think I got to Pitt until like '80 or '81, something like that. Because I went to this other school because my grade point average wasn't high enough, so I had to get my grade point average up to get into school. Then I had to get a scholarship to go to Pitt. But my first teacher was you.
Wow.
You were my first teacher in my first semester. My first class
Wow,
was Dr. James Johnson, and then the book that he handed out was a book about jazz writings in jazz. And in that book, I saw a picture of my dad at his church. And talk a little bit about that, Dr. Johnson.
Well, the books that you're referring to, I was in the editorial report of a couple of those books myself. My name's in there, helping to put together different aspects of the book. And I believe the one you were talking about, my name would be in the front. It was a tall book, but he lowered. Then became a regular size book. I think the picture you were referring to is in the later editions.
Okay.
I'm going to look for it after we finish here, because I think I know that writers in jazz is respected among a lot of the musicians, because everybody's going to have something to say, whether it's negative or positive. That's just human nature. But it comes from a perspective of someone who was on the inside, rather than someone on the outside observing. And because he knew a lot of these musicians personally, he was able to document the story. He did use, Isaac Stern was the name of the author that he respected the most. It came before writings in jazz. That he had the complete history, and not just focusing in on just one area. Like I used to get criticized for eating too much fried chicken, and there was some greens sitting there, and I was just zeroing in on the fried chicken. He said, "You got this, supposed to be a balanced meal, so the book is balanced."
Okay.
And there are some periods in jazz history that we have in that book that you don't really find in other books. Now, third stream is pretty well known, but the progressive jazz period is one that it's the title is misleading. It's not. And then the hard school within the cool school is another.
Okay.
You don't find that in a lot of, and there are reasons for that. That's broken down in that book. There are other good books, but when I look at the totality of the history, then you have to, not because I knew Nathan Davis or Dr. Davis, because the fact that he wrote the truth about it.
Well, coming to the University of Pittsburgh, all of my teachers in my first semester was white, except for you. And I had a tutor. His name was Jack Johnson. No, Jack Giles. His name was Jack Giles.
Okay.
He was a tutor, and he tutored me for my first English class, my first writing and English and everything else. He tutored me in that, but you were the only other black teacher that I had. Everybody else was white. And man, I struggled. I went to school part-time.
Okay.
And worked part-time. But it was refreshing for me to be able to come in. And the first experience I had was with you. You were my first teacher. And then finding out that you started the African-American Music Institute. I mean, I was, I was walking with my chest out, because I knew, I know.
Right.
I've seen him before he started school.
Right.
I always tell younger mentors, I say there's always somebody watching you and influence somebody. My wife has influenced a lot of prominent people in this, especially women in this town. I have had students who come to me, countless, said, because of something that you did. And I said, well, you never, somebody, and some of them I don't even remember. I broke down the band director at Grambling State University, Conrad Hutchinson. I went to his office one day, and he was well known. Grambling, the first band in the first Super Bowl, and popular. I said, you know why I started playing jazz piano? He said, why? I said, because one night you and Ed Sneed and Charles Young played High High the Moon in a teacher's talent show at the auditorium. That's why I started playing. He broke down. He was just teary eyes, and he grabbed back his chair. He said, "You never know." And I thought about that. So you never know who's watching him as a mentor. You're a mentor, and Pam is a mentor. So, but I begin to realize now at my age that I'm being watched a whole lot. So I try to care of myself.
Yeah. Well, Pam. I'm calling you Dr. Pam because I feel like that's how I feel about you.
Thank you.
We couldn't get, I have a sister she's got a beautiful voice, and she wanted to get more, more technique, learning how to breathe, and she came here. She came here, and you were her teacher. So you were the first vocal teacher she ever had.
That's Dr. J is really teach the vocal techniques and all of that. What I do is I coach the singers.
If she comes in and coach,
I
a lot of times I'll drag off.
I bring out what's in them from what they have learned.
She never talked to me about Dr. J. She only talked about you, Pam.
I drag off the hallway a lot, and sometimes she's busy and she comes in with an attitude. I'm trying to get a point across. Especially, I have more female students than I've had male, and I have now.
Okay.
I have a Saturday class now that we have 5 females and 3 males in it. That's unusual. I'm just when I'm in the male, I'm used to doing the boys choir. But she does, especially the younger people. She'll coach on how to move, how to present yourself, stage presence, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, I always say it's more than about just singing. It's entertainment.
Okay.
You want to be able to reach people, and you got to not just sit there and say the words. You got to express it. You got to bring those people into where you are, and then
tell the story.
communicate, tell the story. And I love telling the stories.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of songs I love singing, telling a story.
Well, I can tell. When she came out, with I don't know. All she talked about was Pam, Dr. J. I'm sorry. All she talked about was Dr. Pam. It was in this building.
Yeah.
It was in this building. Yeah.
Yeah, I say she helps. Because a lot of times it takes two of us. It takes 2 of us to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I can't get a point across, so a lot of times I'll just drag off the hallway. Don't care what she's trying. Go out there and get my wife. And she'll come in and say something to lay someone out.
Yeah.
And she doesn't. I don't think she realizes how powerful she is when she's doing that coaching. She doesn't realize how powerful.
Yeah.
And I begin to notice that a lot of times I had all these titles and done all this. They introducing me. Ladies and gentlemen, Pam Johnson, husband. That's not true. That's a name.
All right, Dr. J.
Now you all also have a son who, in my eyes, I started off on drums. So when I started playing, I was playing drums at a very early age, and I was hearing about your son well before I ever heard him play. And then one day I was somewhere, I can't remember where we were, but I saw him. He sat down on those drums and played like he had been playing forever, and he was playing with some heavyweights. He was playing with some heavyweights. I think Dwayne Dolphin was on bass, but I'm not sure. But he was playing with some pretty heavy weights. Tony Campbell was playing. So Tony was in the mix somewhere, but I was focused in on James Johnson the third, and I said, man, look at this kid playing, and he was doing some stuff, and then he was left-handed, right? Is he left-handed?
No, he's not left-handed. You're thinking he's right.
He plays like a
Well, he's
left-handed.
Well, there's something to think about.
Well,
His whole thing, because he wasn't playing with the sticks. He wasn't holding the sticks in the traditional way. He was holding them straight up.
Okay,
He
okay.
was
That's what he
on
does
it
now.
this way.
Yeah.
I said, boy, this kid is amazing.
Yeah, he started out pulling pots and pans from under the cabin.
So how old was he?
Two.
He was two.
And I allowed him. I had a stainless steel skillet, beautiful top. Help yourself, baby. When you see there's something going on with your children,
His
material
professional
things on
gig-
it. Yeah.
His first professional gig, he was 5 years old.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
he made $25. He was hired by Dr. Nelson Harris. And it was an outdoor festival. I was on the piano. I forgot the rest of the band. But nobody paid attention to us. They saw this little kid 5 years old.
Yeah.
Then he started doing concerts with his mother.
Yeah.
Around
All my major concerts I was doing in the
6
city.
years of age and stuff, and we bought him this little play kit. And he started, paying him a little something on the side for a kid, And I'm going back to the 80s.
Yeah.
For a kid at 5 years old to make $25, that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
And then later on, when Kenny Clark moved in with
Oh,
us,
yeah.
that was like a spirit
Right.
that was passed down to him. From Kenny Clark, because you saw a picture of him. Kenny Clark blessing his hands, standing over that.
Yeah, that's true.
And ever since then, he's been young, and he's played with a lot of major musicians. I mean, of course, he's done a whole lot with Sean Jones, Monty Alexander, Bob James. All kinds. But the main person that we always brag about that he spent most of his time with was Ahmad.
Jamal. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And people talk about that little black drum. I say, you talking about my son? That's your son. You can think Jamal went all over, all over the world.
Yes.
I laugh because I think one day Max Roach got a hold of him, and
Oh, yeah, that's up
Max Roach threatened to cut his hands off.
there. Yeah. At a concert, yeah. When you heard it, that is right, over the Manchester.
So yeah, it was in Manchester.
Manchester,
He
right.
played with the Max Roach
We got a
ensemble,
picture
and
of
he
him
was
up there.
was he 8 or 9?
Maybe about 9.
So one day we were riding down the street, and then my son said, "Dad," I said, "What? What's all this making over noise all about this Max Roach?" I say, "Son," asked me about 10 years later. I didn't have to say nothing 10 years ago, but he didn't even realize who he was playing with. He was just following orders and doing
Yeah.
this. So he grew up in a household full of music.
Yeah, you did.
Around musicians used to come to the house all the time for rehearsal and stuff.
Did he know how good he was?
I don't think
He didn't
I don't know.
realize it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's still good. He's still good. He's still, special.
Mhm.
And, I mean, he's a percussionist. He's a musician. I think he's a round musician.
Right.
Yeah.
And you all have done a wonderful job.
Right, and I think by him growing up in the tradition of his older parents,
Yes.
and then being around the modern influences, makes him very, very complete. I mean, there's no style he can't
Cannot
play.
play.
Yeah.
I just felt when he had the opportunity to play with Ahmad Jamal, that's when I knew my son got to be a bad drummer.
Yeah.
Just by that alone.
Yeah.
And we would go to the concerts, we went on a cruise with Ahmad, with James was with him. And Ahmad became so close to us as family, Even now, I'm about to add an addition to the building, and I'm naming it the Ahmad Jamal Performance Hall.
All right.
Because it's just how much I love him and what he meant to my son and our family.
That's
And
fantastic.
this is his home. So am I gonna have a little extension of saying, oh, they over in the Ahmad Jamal Performance Hall.
Now, he went to Kappa too,
Yeah,
right?
he went to Capitol.
Yeah.
So that means he got touched by Roger.
Rogers, yeah.
Oh yeah,
Pictures-
Roger Humphrey was
pictures-
his
yeah,
mentor. Roger
that's all.
Humphrey and his nephew Greg Humphrey.
Oh,
Okay,
yes.
Greg.
Greg was our teacher.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
right,
that's
right,
when we
right.
started Greg, yeah.
Never forget Greg.
Dwayne, all of
Yeah.
them was the
But
first.
his first rehearsal when Ma Jamal was in New Orleans. I said, well, how did he say? He would walk in, go out, go to the bathroom, come back. So when they did it, I think the first concert was at New Orleans University. they didn't play one number that they rehearsed.
Mm.
That's the kind of concert. And I've been around. I did in this very room a 2-hour rehearsal with James Moody.
Mm-hmm.
He played only one number. We went to the jazz festival. Only one.
Yeah.
I said, man, we spent all that time learning all that stuff. You never know what these jazz musicians' heads are or where they're gonna go.
Yeah.
You just never know.
Well, you know, you all made so much history back then, you know, as you were coming out of the South
Yeah,
and coming
up north.
here, up north, and experiencing this northern thing, you know, in this city here, and then starting this organization that, you know, you may have had thousands of kids come through here, but the impact is hundreds of millions, because those kids that you taught are performing before millions of people, you know, and their records and are selling and everything else.
Well, I probably shouldn't say it, but I'm gonna say it anyway. What you're talking about, a lot of musicians outside of Pittsburgh have picked up on. And this is why you'll see pictures of Ahmad Jamal coming here doing something for us. Monte Alexander doing something for us. Gary Bell, Kelly Price. People offer to do stuff for us. And usually we don't seek these people out, they seek us out. When John Hendricks, the great vocalist, came in here, he did a workshop with my boys choir through Janet Birdie downtown Pittsburgh Culture District. He said the vibe was so strong, he walked in the building, it almost knocked him out. All of them say something similar to that vibe, and I try to tell people it permeates from the founders down through. You can have all the nice, beautiful building in the world, but you don't have the right spirit, it means nothing. I know of another organization, one of our sister organizations in another city, they got this big, beautiful building. I remember it cost them $3 million to build, but the vibe is not really the same. It wasn't the same until later. I used to go down there and counsel with them. So now the wife, I won't bother to call her name, but the wife is now the CEO, and the husband is director of music. And I helped them come up with ideas. In fact, I need to call them. We're supposed to be doing a joint collaboration. Pretty soon. So that's so important, though.
And the work continues.
Yes, that's it.
Still have kids coming through here, adults coming through here, all of those things. You're still doing performances and events and things. Talk about the future.
Well, before we go to the future, let me just events. One of the things that my wife and I still do, every first Saturday night, we have a jazz event called Jazz at the Loading Dock, where we serve. That's a fee. You can call the institute to find out what that is. And I call it a Las Vegas style jazz show because after being married over 50 years, we have earned the right to crack and grip on each other. Roll each other. A lot of that happens, there, and people are laughing. A lot of people say this is therapeutic. Generally, it's an older crowd, but sometimes we've had younger people there. So every first Saturday night, that's something that we do. We're in our 40th anniversary, so I would let my wife talk about the events that are coming up for this year, the 40th year.
Well, we're having our Gumbo Fest is coming up called Louisiana. So I named it Louisiana because my sister started the Gumbo Fest when we started the school back in the 80s. So part of the 40th anniversary, we brought in Dickie Doo, a band from Louisiana, and we had it out in the parking lot.
It's called Gumbo Festival, so it means it's gonna be eating gumbo.
Bottom line. Menu gumbo. Okay, that's it.
That's it.
Right, and then my daughter is the chief chef.
My sister turned it over to her,
So we're gonna Zydeco dance, and I forgot what today's date is.
And where's it gonna be again?
At St.
It's
James
gonna be at
Avenue
St.
Church
James.
in East Liberty.
Okay.
444 Lincoln Avenue.
And then after that, we're gonna be having our gala over in April. We're gonna dress up and do our thing and show the people the history of these 40 years.
And that would be April 29th. And
That's in
literally,
Monroeville.
there are people coming from California,
Everywhere.
Kentucky, Louisiana, Georgia,
That's some great stuff.
and then Father's Day. We'll do a tribute to Father for the choir. You know, we've always, and this is written in my dissertation about the future, we wanted to become a model.
Yes.
And I guess because a lot of these people that we mentioned earlier coming in here to do workshops, you know, at their, and they really don't charge us. I don't know if I should say that,
Yeah,
but want to do it on a larger scale. We traveled widely in the United States and abroad. Been just about to every country in Africa, probably except Nigeria and Chad. We were once in charge of the International SIMPAD African Conference, Arts and Culture Division. And we were going to these various countries and bring the warriors and the sings and the dances together and the drummers. A lot of times they hadn't even met each other. We even brought back people in the apartheid movement that went to South Africa and broke down and started crying, and they hadn't seen each other in 30 years. So, you know, we're doing all that, and then we're always representing, well, we are, you know, co-founders of the Afro-American Music Institute in Pittsburgh. And I've seen other institutions, but we lectured in Ghana.
Yeah.
What's this? You know, the University of Ghana.
Yeah.
I say, let me tell y'all something right now. I say this everywhere I go. Had it not been for the combined efforts of my wife and I, this wouldn't happen. I know a lot of people who try to do things, and because they were by themselves, they were not in agreement or in step with their spouse, it just didn't work. Or it was too much stress.
You know, I've seen white and black and white students come through this organization. You all have turned out musicians that are exceptional. They're excellent.
Sure.
They're excellent, and they won it.
Yeah,
They won it.
I think Tommy Parker won a Grammy the other night. They say he was on stage. That's because he came on in the group. I couldn't see. You know, I don't see so well.
Yeah.
But
he was up for it.
But we've had students to go all over the world. One you may know, been a minister Keith Moncrief.
Yeah.
Took a group to Europe and took over. I think it was Austria by storm. I mean, but he's now pastoring. This is the thing, you know, a mission that God called him to do.
Right.
Because he was on his way to, you know, doing things. I mean, there are countless stories of musicians that have had, you know, awards and things like that. So I look at it like this is the Shaolin Temple of jazz. You know, the Shaolin Temple where the bald-headed priests is going around talking to the grasshoppers, and they go out to the world, and you know, the temple is here. And I've always held that. I mean, I perform all over the world, but I'm not out there like a lot of my students are every day. That would drive me crazy.
Yeah.
But we teach you here, do what you want, you know. Right. And we got the church musicians as well. We've taught ministers. Yeah. We've taught people from the Nation of Islam, Buddhists. I mean, it's one, but once you enter into our temple, you check your egos at the door, and we become one big family.
That's it.
That's what it's all about. One
big
family.
And that's how you get to respect and learn the music and get the music in you, and you get the swing. If it's there, it's gonna come out.
It's gonna come out. That's for true.
That's one thing you all have been excellent at. If somebody has that X factor, your son has an X factor. Either you have it or you don't.
I hear you.
And you know, you can stir it up,
right?
But you can't make that happen. If it's in a person, it's in
them. That's it.
Well, yeah, I always look at that musician and say, well, how in the world can that child be playing keyboard like that at 5? I say, God said yes.
Yeah,
now,
that's right.
But there's always something that someone can learn. We've had businessmen here, bankers, and if all they learn is just to do, that's simple.
Yeah.
But it's something that they learn. It's something here for everyone, regardless of your background. I remember I had I'm laughing. And these guys drive me crazy. They were all from another ethnic group. And their rhythm was terrible. So I invited some ladies out the hallway and made them dance. I see what your problem is. You can't dance. So when they learned to dance, their rhythm got better.
Okay.
I'll do anything to get a point across.
Yeah.
One day, I think one of the drum instructors came, they found me crawling across the pianos down the hallway. I was trying to get a message about, you don't have to do that kid right now. I use any part of my body, anything to get a message. I don't care what it is. She'll tell you.
That's amazing. Well, you know, the future, because of you all, the future looks bright for our community. Knowing that you're going to add on, that means you ain't going nowhere. So you're going to add on
That's right.
a Ahmad Jamal wing,
Performance hall, that's
a
right.
performance hall to
Yes.
this building. That means you're going to be around here for quite a while. And we want to thank you all
Thank you
for this interview. This is priceless. And it's going to go out all out into the Ethernet and internet and everything else. And we want people, because we're going to take this even into March. You know, we're okay with Black History Month,
I hear you.
but it's the
That's
shortest
good.
month in the year.
Yeah,
And our thing is, hey, no, this reaches out into much
right
further
about
than,
that.
you know. But we're thankful that we get a month that we can put a spotlight on folks who have changed. Really, you've been a part of changing the world in the work that you're doing. And oftentimes I tell people, I'm probably your biggest cheerleader. I tell them, no AMI, no center of life. If you all hadn't done this, I wouldn't have had a template to look at. It wouldn't have been a template to look at, really, you know? Because you don't learn this in school.
Right.
No.
You do not get in Pittsburgh public schools or charter schools, you don't get this. Because they don't have this, you know? So, you know, I'm thankful that you all have been a blessing. Your fingerprints are on the work that we've done as well. And when we end all these podcasts, I do a call and response. It's a very simple one. It's one that you all know very well. I'll make the call. Say it loud.
I'm Black and I'm proud.
Yes, indeed. Amen.
That's it. That's it.